Hello, welcome everyone. This is PSFK. We are happy to have you here for our latest webinar, which we will be sharing insights from our loyalty debrief. For those of you who don't recognize our voices or my voice, this is Scott Latchet. I am the president of research and strategy. And as often is the case, I am joined by my colleague Penn Whailing, who is a senior strategist on the team and ultimately the lead author of the report. And we will be walking you through the findings of that over the next 30 minutes or so. Just for a bit of background, in case you are not already a member, PSFK is a business intelligence platform. We specialize in retail and CX innovation. You can see a number of the services that we offer here, both for our members and a number of bespoke services for our clients. If you're interested at all in understanding any of the things that we offer, please feel free to reach out to our colleague, Jeff Weiner, jeff.weiner@psfk.com, and he will be happy to give you details on any of our services and answer any of your questions. With the latest debrief, we're going to be looking at the loyalty space, the shifting changes that are happening from consumer expectations, as well as the innovations that are happening from brands, just to give you a little sense of how we are thinking about the broader loyalty space through the context of this report. Really, we're seeing that the marketplace is being defined by much greater choice and product commoditization, so to speak, so that transactional loyalty programs really don't have the same sway that they had with consumers in the past. What we're seeing is that consumers are seeking out things like personalized engagement, emotional connection, and ultimately an exceptional experience with the brands that they choose to interact with. And so therefore, we're seeing that this one size fits all notion of loyalty really doesn't work for today's consumers. As a result, we're seeing that companies are investing in delivering value and relevance and ultimately treating their loyalty programs as a way into the broader brand ecosystem. As we move forward in this webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the changing expectations from consumers, take a look at how some of the challenges that retailers and brands are facing, and then get into the trends. So I will take a pause here for a moment and turn it over to Penn, who will talk to you a little bit about that changing consumer dynamic we're seeing.
As Scott mentioned, the current marketplace has been increasingly defined by product commoditization and increased choice. Therefore, the traditional transactional-based loyalty programs hold less sway with today's consumers. And we're finding that while consumers are willing to sign up for loyalty programs, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're loyal. Many consumers belong to multiple loyalty programs, but are only active in a few of them. And again, we're really seeing consumers move beyond the punch card that you keep in your wallet, and they really expect the loyalty program to be seamlessly embedded into their overall shopping experience. They want the loyalty programs to be easy to use and automatic.
Yeah, and I think as well, just sort of seeing loyalty as a tool in some ways to improve the way that their overall experience with the brand will be dictated as well.
And as consumers, especially younger consumers, value experiences over material goods, we're seeing that they want perks beyond points, such as exclusive access to products or experiences. And increasingly, they're willing to pay for those perks. And as Scott mentioned, consumers are viewing loyalty programs as a way to connect with the brand at large. And they're really seeking an emotional connection with their favorite brands, not just monetary rewards in exchange for purchases. And lastly, consumers view loyalty as a mutual value exchange. They expect it to be a two-way street, and in exchange for sharing their personal information and data, they expect brands to offer them loyalty in return.
As we shift to look at some of the challenges that are being faced by the industry at large, it's not necessarily a challenge of not having a loyalty program, but it's really how brands are thinking about the value that those loyalty programs can unlock. In the same way that we see retail increasingly shifting to a sort of seamless experience across all channels, online and digital, we're really seeing that brands are not doing a good job of integrating their loyalty experience across all of those channels. Ultimately, this can mean that brands still have some sort of a physical loyalty card, or in many cases, are just doing digital only and not thinking about how that sort of streamlines across various channels and interactions. Alongside that, we see that there's a disconnect in terms of how brands view their loyalty programs. From a consumer point of view, we're seeing that consumers don't ultimately see these as being personalized, so to speak, and brands are still thinking about sort of reaching the broadest demographic with their loyalty programs. And ultimately, this isn't delivering the level of relevance and curation that is going to be truly meaningful and resonate with consumers. And then finally, loyalty still at the end of the day is being treated as a transactional lever. Ultimately, it's rewarding people for purchases and that sort of bottom line sales experience, but it's not really creating a true connection with consumers. And there's a lot of reasons that we see that happening, but we'll go into that as we look at some of the innovations that are taking place within that space. But really, one of the big shifts that we're seeing is that ultimately brands and retailers need to start thinking about the holistic customer and all of the ways that they potentially engage with and create value for a brand, and then finding ways to measure and ultimately reward that type of behavior. As mentioned, we're going to go through in detail talking about what we see as the sort of six tenets of the modern loyalty experience. Ultimately, we see this as a way for brands to create more value, up the level of relevance and personalization that they're able to deliver, make this feel like this is something that is a valued experience that understands consumer needs and deliver something that not only improves that sort of end-to-end customer experience, but also values the way that consumers can contribute to that as well. With the first tenet that we're going to talk through, we're addressing this notion of the personal gateway. And ultimately, we see this as being sort of driven by a mobile app experience. This is a way in for consumers into that broader brand ecosystem. As we've talked about in the past, that sort of transactional moment that initiates a purchase and a relationship with consumers is really that sort of way in for a brand. And as they get consumers sort of into the system, so to speak, they need to create ways to unify the experience that they're going to be offering, and ultimately finding ways to continually get consumers to engage. In a lot of cases, that sort of transactional experience only happens on a semi-regular basis. And the brands that are truly succeeding are finding ways to keep consumers engaged, keep that brand top of mind, so that when the next sort of purchase comes through, that the sort of first place that a consumer is going to go is ultimately going to be to that brand. So this is both sort of the key to unlocking that experience, as well as thinking about the sort of broader offerings that a brand can create on the back of that.
And an example of a brand that's really doing a great job of using their mobile app to allow members to unlock this personalized and responsive shopper experience, both online and in store, is Nike with their NikePlus app. Shoppers can use the app to browse for lifestyle inspiration, get access to new products, shop online, register for events. And then they also offer a whole host of in-store features with a special in-store mode that allows shoppers to unlock additional functionalities, such as scanning the mannequin for more details about a product, or having items reserved in the dressing room, or even paying automatically anywhere in the store, allowing them to skip the checkout lines.
One of the things that I think is interesting that Nike's trying to do here is really sort of leverage their loyalty program and the mobile app experience as that sort of first point of contact for every interaction that a customer has with the brand. So not only are they thinking about this through their rewards program, but ultimately treating this as a tool that, increases their level of interaction and the sort of exceptional experience that they can have with the store and with the brand. As Penn mentioned, they're delivering content that's personalized to that user, and then using this as that sort of way of understanding that customer in a much more personalized manner and tracking them throughout each of these interactions as well.
Yeah, and I think that they're doing a good job of continually rolling out new features to drive continued engagement. Recently read that they're testing out vending machines that dispense free items, so consumers will continually turn to the app to engage with the brand and see what's new.
Yeah, and I think as we've seen, the sort of notion of getting a consumer to download a mobile app is something that's always a challenge. And so you need to be prepared to have something that consistently delivers value to that consumer and gives them a reason to continually turn to that and use it as a tool more broadly. While we're talking about a broader sort of definition of loyalty here that goes beyond the sort of traditional rewards and points-based systems, it still is an important piece to consider within the broader loyalty ecosystem. And what we're finding is that, especially in those sort of early interactions with consumers, that brands are rethinking how they structure those reward programs, being much more flexible and agile in terms of the incentives that they offer, thinking about giving more frequent rewards, maybe less monetary or discount based, but continually finding ways to add value to those consumer interactions and deliver something that is going to keep that brand top of mind.
And an example of a brand that's rethought its reward structure and the way that points are redeemed in order to encourage less frequent visitors is Starbucks. So, realizing that many consumers get frustrated with rewards programs because it takes too long to earn rewards, Starbucks recently restructured its rewards programs to allow consumers to receive rewards in as few as 2 to 3 visits, in order to provide a benefit to less frequent customers who maybe don't get lattes every day. So rather than having to wait until they've accumulated up to 125 points in order to get a free drink, now members have the option to redeem rewards in smaller increments, such as 25 points for an extra shot of espresso, and allowing them to receive smaller perks and encourage engagement.
And again, I think Starbucks is a great example of a brand that's really sort of thought about how that loyalty program integrates into the sort of way that consumers interact with that brand. Through that mechanism, the loyalty program is seamlessly integrated into the sort of payment system that they've created, and then ultimately is used as a way for people to place orders and really sort of streamline the broader transactional nature of their relationship too. And so I think we see this as a bit of a, alongside Nike and some of the other examples as some of these gold standards that really do a great job of thinking about this holistically. With the third tenet, we're not just talking about amazing jackets. We're also talking about this notion of members only from the standpoint of how a brand thinks about what it can offer as an exclusive to its members. In this case, again, sort of looking beyond loyalty points and rewarding members with things that are truly going to be meaningful. In this case, this is things like early access to new products, exclusive experiences, services that are only available to members. Ultimately thinking of things that are going to add value to a product or a brand experience, and then making those exclusive to people who are enrolled within that program. And oftentimes these can be very sort of small things, but when putting that sort of exclusivity layer on top of it, it becomes much more meaningful as a result.
And one retailer who's doing this well is Nordstrom, who recently revamped its loyalty programs to offer members personalized service and experiences in addition to the traditional point system of its previous program. So it allows members to access exclusive in-store events such as beauty and style workshops, as well as services such as alterations, as well as house calls from Nordstrom stylists. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in conjunction with its strategy of rolling out Nordstrom local stores, the small format stores that offer services and really try to position the retailer as part of consumers' daily lives.
And again, I think this is about creating these hooks for consumers, thinking about what you can offer as a brand that goes beyond that sort of product or shopping experience and really starts to create this sort of broader level of value that you can offer. It's obviously super valuable for a brand to have consumers as part of that loyalty program. As we'll see sort of as we go through this, there's a tremendous amount of one-to-one data that's generated as a result. That information can be used in a lot of different ways. Reference our shopper data debrief for some of that as well. But then also, thinking about how you continue to sort of keep the consumer engaged and wanting to continue to interact with your brand as well. As just mentioned, that sort of notion of one-to-one loyalty is ultimately what a brand is trying to drive in terms of its relationship to consumers. And as they create these loyalty programs, it's generating a tremendous amount of data about individual preferences, interactions, etc. And there's a way that brands can leverage that to deliver much more meaningful rewards and curated recommendations that make the consumer feel as though they have that one-to-one relationship with a brand. I think oftentimes we see that loyalty programs is treated as something that are fixed programs. X number of points equals, X type of reward. But in reality, the way that they need to be thought of today is something that's flexible and continually evolving based on the way that consumers are using that. At best, these are things that are sort of updated on a one-to-one basis. But certainly as the behaviors and sort of interactions of consumers are tracked, this is something that can be updated on a broader level as well. And we see a lot of brands continually evolving their loyalty programs and involving their consumers in that process as well.
An example of a brand doing this well is cosmetics brand Shiseido, who implemented a consumer data platform in order to leverage the data generated by its loyalty app and create a more unified view of its members. So it's taking its own data from the loyalty program, the in-store and mobile POS, as well as website visits, along with third-party data in order to accurately assess each consumer's needs and preferences, and then develop more relevant customer communications through its loyalty app. And apparently these efforts increased in-store revenue by 20% per loyalty program member.
Yeah, and I think this really gets at that notion of a 360-degree view of who your consumer is. And really the sort of way into that is through loyalty programs. And again, going back to that sort of notion of creating a personal gateway, that's a way for a brand to not only deliver value to consumers, but really sort of understand them in a much more holistic way, and then deliver experiences and rewards as a result of that. As mentioned earlier in the webinar, we're sort of big on this notion of thinking beyond transactions in terms of how a loyalty program actually measures the value that a consumer brings to the table. And while transactions are always going to be a part of that experience, there's a sort of realization that consumers can do a lot more to create value and be rewarded for the interactions that they're doing. So things like referrals, sharing posts on social media, and ultimately sort of delivering feedback on the products and services that a brand is creating are a way to not only, sort of generate engagement, but also try to translate those consumers' efforts into advocacy and then reward them in kind for that experience. And I think, again, one of the other things that we see here is it's a way particularly for consumers who might not be able to generate the same level of total spend, is to reward aspirational consumers who might be big fans, but for whatever reason aren't frequent purchasers from your brand, and really bring them deeper into that ecosystem and keep them highly engaged.
An example of a brand doing this well is sportswear retailer Reebok, who recently unveiled the Reebok Unlocked loyalty program that rewards members for every brand interaction. So not only can members earn points for every dollar spent, but they can also earn points for posting on social media, reviewing products, or attending events, or even simply creating an account. And in exchange, Reebok lets consumers work towards experiential rewards, including invitations to exclusive events, early access to new products, VIP customer service, as well as on-demand training.
Yeah, the one thing I would just add here is I think it's interesting to see how a brand that is attempting to reinvent itself is really stepping up the game in terms of its loyalty program and really sort of thinking about how they can generate a lot more of that sort of engagement from new fans or existing fans and really sort of leverage that to amplify what the brand is doing, and then recognizing that there is value in those interactions and finding ways to reward customers for doing so.
And to Scott's earlier point, this rewards program was geared specifically towards Gen Z consumers who, again, may be big fans of the brand but are not able to purchase as frequently.
As we get to the sixth and final tenet, we're going to be looking at what we're calling pay for premium loyalty programs. I think this is best exemplified by Amazon Prime, which, is sort of the archetype for what these systems can begin to offer. When ultimately you see that there's value in creating services that maybe on their own are not necessarily scalable or affordable from a brand point of view, but then you start to stack those on top of one another as a bundle and people are willing to pay for that. Obviously, this can be things like, sort of extra exclusive services and perks, things like free shipping or expedited shipping, all the way through to content and so many other sort of aspects of it. We're certainly seeing a lot of experimentation beginning to happen within the context of this. And then through these sort of subscribed services, you're really sort of incentivizing consumers in a slightly different way to continually think about, purchasing from your brand and, get experiences that they otherwise wouldn't have access to were they not pay for members.
Home goods e-commerce retailer Wayfair has implemented their membership program called Wayfair My Way, which allows members in exchange for a $30 annual fee to enjoy perks like free shipping on everything from smaller items, which wouldn't be very cost effective to ship, as well as larger items of furniture, as well as 25% off in-home installation and assembly services through their partner Handy, as well as access to exclusive content and insider sales. And the program can be used across its family of brands, including Wayfair, All Modern, and Joss & Main.
I think it'll be interesting to see how a company like Wayfair, as it begins to contemplate the sort of physical store experience, continues to think about how ways that this program can add value. Obviously, $30 is not that much to pay for a yearly subscription, but perhaps as they layer in new services and things, then it's ultimately a way to generate more revenue for the company as well. Before we get to the final takeaways, we just wanted to pause for a moment and reflect back at the 6 tenets of modern loyalty that we've just walked you through. Again, sort of thinking about the way that a brand invites a consumer into that loyalty ecosystem and then continues to generate value and reward consumers for their engagement, and then ultimately thinking about the way that they potentially can even leverage that loyalty as an extra stream of revenue and way to deliver greater value to their customers. Now, as we close out and look at some of the bigger learnings from our assessment of the sort of innovations happening within the loyalty space, we wanted to just take a moment to talk through these sort of 5 key learnings here. The first is that loyalty, again, ultimately is a way into the broader brand ecosystem. It's not just something that is there to generate additional transactions from consumers, but ultimately is a way to, treat them as a member, welcome them into that sort of brand ecosystem, and then think about the things that are ultimately going to add value to their product ownership experience and or their continued experiences shopping with and through your brand, both online and through digital platforms. The second notion is really sort of, again, looking beyond transactions and thinking about how you drive additional engagement. In many ways, that loyalty program can be a tool for education and other ways of improving the broader experience that you're offering. But then, again, thinking about how you continue to keep your brand top of mind within that experience. The third is leveraging the information that you're generating from all of the interactions, behaviors, transactions, etc., from your consumer interacting through that loyalty program, and use that as a way to deliver a recognized experience, deliver relevance and personalization that's going to be truly meaningful to them. And, again, sort of thinking about the loyalty program as something that's ever evolving. The fourth is, taking a step back and thinking about, in a perfect world, what are the broader services and experiences that you could be offering to improve both the shopping experience as well as the product experience for consumers, and thinking about how you can then attach a dollar amount to that and bundle something together that consumers are willing to pay for. And then the fifth is, again, sort of thinking about the ways that the loyalty program not only is a way to keep consumers within the context of your brand ecosystem, but ultimately translate them into advocates on behalf of your brand and incentivize them to add value not only to the things that you're offering, but the broader community as well. So just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for joining us on today's webinar. We will be following up on this webinar with the debrief, which we will be launching soon afterwards. Again, please feel free to reach out to our colleague Jeff Weiner, jeff.weiner@psfk.com, if you're interested in understanding the membership side of the business, or if you have any questions related to this particular report. We will be happy to answer any of those offline. Again, thanks so much, and look forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback on our latest webinar and report.